Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Tulley, President of Defend, Publish, and Lead, and welcome to episode 123, The May Push. At the time we're recording this episode, it is May of 2023, and I have previously done a couple of episodes about planning for writing over the summer of 2023. And so what I wanted to do today was to expand on that and talk about how I'm going to use one of my May days to specifically get a little bit more work done. May is special to a lot of academic parents because it sometimes, if you have school-age children, is a golden window when you can get some writing completed, but your own children are not out of school yet. So that would be the case for me, where my semester ends the first week of May. And so sometimes, depending on how schedules align, I can have between 2 and 4 weeks of writing where I have longer days where my children are in school, but I am not teaching, I'm not prepping for another class, my grades are turned in, and I've got some writing time. I also like to do a kind of a May push because I think ahead to if I'm going to take any time off in the summer or take, any vacations or just spend a little bit more time with my family. If I'm going to do that, that means I'm probably doing less writing since it's always a little bit of a trade-off. So May has traditionally been a very productive month for me where any free day I have while my children are in school and I have available, I try to lean in very hard to get some writing completed. And what I wanted to do today was to share with you what one of those push day schedules might look like. So for those of you that are on audio only and you're not watching this on YouTube, what I'm sharing on the screen is a picture of the Google Sheet calendar where I planned out for May what projects I was going to work in on what days. And I will put the episode to that episode up in our show notes. So that way you can kind of see, this is basically a trio of episodes. One episode talked about really thinking through big picture summer writing. So deciding what days am I writing, what days am I not writing. The second episode in the trio talked about how I know what projects I'm going to work on, and to a big extent that is based on what time is available. So if I have a whole month that I'm not going to really be able to get any work done, I'm not going to try to push through a big book project at the same time. And I talked through, in my case, I'm working on a new book proposal for my next book, and May seem like the perfect time to do it because I have these longer windows of time to think through some of the big concepts. I write a sample chapter, think about the different things that need to be in a new book. So something like that would be difficult for me to pull off if I only had, say, 5 writing days out of a month. But May is relatively open. So what's on the screen right now is my May calendar, which shows some days that have X's through them. So for example, Friday, May 5th, Saturday, May 6th, there's a big X through it because I know I can't get any writing on those days. Other days, I have some projects assigned to those days that I'm going to work on, or different parts of the same project. So for example, in May, I'm going to work through this book proposal, but there's the proposal itself, there's a CV, there's a sample chapter, there are some other pieces that have to go with that. So while the proposal is sort of the project of the month in May, I'm going to work on all those separate pieces. And then I also have a secondary project where I have to watch for another book that has been out and submitted for review that I'm waiting to hear some reviews back on. So I know I have to keep an eye on that because I might need to drop the future book to go back to the one that's already in progress. And that's okay. That's how juggling multiple projects is. So what I wanted to show is just a sample day. So on this calendar, on Thursday, May 18th, I looked at what time I have available. I pretty much have the time period that my children are in school. And so what I did was I thought through, well, how am I going to use this time effectively, but also realistically? So sometimes when we have, say, a stretch from like 8 to 3 available, we think we're working from 8 to 3. But we all know that's not the case. We have to stand up. We need to stretch. We have to go get, food or coffee or whatever we need to do to keep moving. We might need to move locations, just depending on where it is you're writing. And so what I set up is kind of an acknowledgement that I can probably push pretty hard on 3 hours of work in the morning and 2-ish in the afternoon. And so what I did, and I put this little sample chapter up for those of you on YouTube, you can see this, but for those of you audio only, I decided what I really want to do on this particular day is to open up my sample chapter outline. I have a sample chapter that is drafted where there's chunks of it written And then there's an outline where other things are going to go. I know something that has to fill in that outline are a few of some topics I've talked about in our podcast episodes, because this next book will be about academic writing project management. And a lot of the things I try out on the podcast or I test on the podcast will go into this book. But I know in this particular sample chapter, there's 3 episodes that have content that I want to make sure I get into the book. And many times, especially because I'm doing a podcast, I'm saying it in a way that might sound more natural than if I tried to write it. So in this case, what I'm going to do is look through some podcast episodes for that first hour and a half stretch from 8:30 to 10 and find those episodes and then figure out where they're going to go in the book. So that's going to be some digging, maybe not a ton of writing in that first hour and a half, because I really want to think through which episodes did I have the descriptions I want and the content that I want. They might also have some sources related to those episodes that I need to go and look at. So 8:30 to 10 is me thinking through some big picture issues and sort of deciding the structure of this chapter, at least in these spots where these episode descriptions are going to go. I know by 10 o'clock I'll need to stand up. So I purposely build in a half-hour walking break. I'll be working on campus because campus for me is a great place for me to write versus writing at home. So I'm just going to take a nice stroll around the campus. Hopefully it won't be a crazy Ohio May day with tornadoes or rain or sometimes snow. You just never know. But hopefully I'll be able to do that and build in 30 minutes of walking. At that point, I'll come back, and what I'll be pulling, now that I know which episodes I want to use in my sample chapter, I'm going to go and get the transcripts from those episodes, dig them up, and start copying some of that content into my outline. That doesn't mean it's going to stay that way, but that's going to be time consuming. So 3 15-minute episodes of a podcast, 3 transcripts of that type of material. I don't need all the material, but I want to go through each of the transcripts and grab out chunks of descriptions that I need. Because for me, this is already created content. This is already audio created content that has a transcript. It won't go in the book that way, but it has some of the things written out that I need to write out. And so one thing that I'd recommend at this point, especially in May, it's really a good time to think through what's something I've already made or something I already had that I can use towards a future writing project. It might be some notes on a conference slide. It might be a start to an article that you've abandoned and now you're working on something else, but maybe you can see, oh, that one example in that abandoned article might work really well here. So I'm purposely building in the time to do some of that structural work where I'm figuring out what content I want to use and I'm building it in. At noon, so that's now for keeping track, I did an 8:30 to 10 a.m. stint, took a 30-minute walk, 10:30 to 12, worked some more about putting in the content from the transcripts. I know for me, I'm happy to work, eating lunch and writing at the same time. So I put a little break in there to go grab something. And then from 12 to 2, I want to really look at that chapter now that I've dropped in that additional content and start smoothing out the edges. So reading top to bottom, figuring out what context I need to put around some of the chunks I've worked in. I know I will need to insert some citation and sources, so I'll be doing some work there. But I kind of think of this as sort of smoothing out the cracks and all the places where I patched some information in. So for me, that is easier work to do after I've already been writing for a while, but it's also work that I can stop and start at any time if I want to stand up while I'm writing, because if we think about this, I've been at it now for at least 3 hours and I've got 2 more to go. That's too much time sitting in the chair for me. So I might take my laptop and go to like a standing desk to work on that, because it's easier for me to kind of start, stop, move around for that task. And then from 2 to 2:15, before I have to leave for picking up children from school, I know I want to make some quick notes for the next session, which would be that next Friday. I have another big day. So I want to make sure I have good notes about where I left off, leave some highlights in my draft. So hopefully this gives you some idea about how you could use one of these bigger writing days and map out what you're doing. Notice I thought about, when do I need to think about real big picture issues? What can I do standing up? What can I do towards the tail end of a longer writing session? Did I build in some time to move around? And so on. So that's how I'm going to look at it. And I'm going to do one of these little daily schedules for each of the days that I have in May. And for the other thing that I'm doing, when I mentioned between 2 and 2:15, making notes for the next session, I am going to make sure that one of the notes I make is just a quick schedule for Friday. How do I want to think through that Friday time, knowing how Thursday turned out? So it might mean I don't get all of this work done. Thursday might get off the rails. I might spend all the things I was going to do between 8:30 and 10. That might end up taking me till 2. I don't know that yet. So I'm going to then adjust accordingly and then map out what Friday would look like. So hopefully this type of strategy has you see big picture from like what days can I write, to what projects am I going to work on, to when am I going to do them on a specific writing day. That's really the cycle that we want to try to get to. On that note, I do want to point out that if you're looking for a May project, one thing that is coming up for us, and this episode should be out before this starts, but if not, you are welcome to jump in at any point. Just contact me at Christine@defendandpublish.com. But Jim Lang, author of Small Teaching and Distracted and On Course, and many books about basically the student situation today in America's college classrooms, has an institute on writing trade books using academic expertise from inception to publication. And this institute will basically consist of 4 weekly 1-hour classes to get a trade book proposal completed. So if that's something that you're looking for, we actually start that in May. You can use that as a launching point into a summer project and develop a trade book proposal. So he'll be talking a lot about trade books. We might sometimes think of those as non-academic or the type of books you see in Barnes & Noble, but quite a few trade books use our academic expertise and serve in that sort of nebulous bridge area. So if you want to join us for that one, I would encourage you to grab some of the last seats. We don't have many left. I would encourage you to grab one of those. So you get 4 writing classes with hands-on feedback from Jim, plus a half-hour coaching session about your proposal for $50. So it tends to be a good deal. If you're listening to this episode far off into the future and that has come and gone, but you're interested in the content, you can come back to me and find out if you can get a recording of that workshop and register a little bit later to access that recording. So you don't have to be attending these, you don't have to attend these Defend and Publish and Lead events live. We do record all of them, so you can just attend via recording if that's more convenient for your schedule. And finally, I want to point out our textbook and academic resource of the day. If you remember, we're sponsored by the Textbook and Academic Authoring Association. They are holding a conference in June, on June 9th and 10th, which is virtual. And I love this conference because basically the whole idea of the conference is author support. There are very few conferences that deal with all kinds of things, from textbooks to scholarly articles to book proposals, all in the same conference. So I will be there. And I would encourage, and I'm actually going as an attendee, I'm not presenting. So I just want to put that out there, that I find it valuable just for me to go as an attendee, but I'd encourage you to go ahead and grab a seat and register for that so you don't miss any of that content. So if you need to join the TAA, if you remember, we do have a discount code. I will put that in, and you're welcome to check that out as well. So I hope that you have found this information helpful, and happy writing this week.